there, Mark chapter 12, verse 1. Then he began to speak to them in parables. A man planted in a vineyard and set a hedge around it, and dug a place for the wine vat, built a tower that he leased to the Vinedressers, and went into a far country. Now at the vintage time, he sent a servant to the vinedressers that he might receive some of the fruit of the vineyard from the vinedressers. They took him and beat him and sent him away empty-handed. Again, he sent them another servant, and at him they threw stones, wounded him in the head, and sent him away shamefully treated. And again, he sent another. Him they killed, and many others, beating some and killing some. Now Isaiah, it paints a picture of Israel as a vineyard. And we understand that the wicked tenants are the leaders of Israel, the religious leaders of Israel. And the service that Vinedresser sends is the prophets. He sends to talk with Israel. And when people don't like the message, they always try to get rid of the messenger. I've seen it at work. Employer trying to get rid of an employee who speaks out. I've seen it the other way. I've seen an employee who doesn't like the manager trying to get rid of the manager. I've seen it in churches. I've seen church members try to get rid of the pastor when the pastor speaks truth. I've seen it the other way. I've seen pastors who didn't like some of the church members when they spoke out or they asked questions. The pastor tried to get rid of them. We see it in politics. Those who want to see change are quietened or try to snub them or try to silence them. In our society, we see it more and more, but the scripture reminds us that that's the way it's always been. It's nothing really new. But never fear. Don't let it concern you. Because if the message is true, doesn't matter how many messengers they try to get rid of, the truth always prevails. The truth always comes out. Right. So just hang on. Just get ready for it. The nation of Israel was failing to produce the fruit of righteousness. That was their fruit. That was who they were supposed to be. They were supposed to point all the other nations towards God. They were supposed to be a light in a dark world. They were supposed to show the way how to serve God and what your life could be if you had God in your life. Red Seas get parted. People thrown into a pit of fire don't get burned, don't get singed, don't even smell like smoke. You throw them in a lion's den and they come out uneaten. Israel was supposed to show the way, how true God was and what it was like to serve him. And yet Israel failed miserably at that. They began to worship other idols. They began to worship other gods. They tried to combine the worship of God and all these other idols. They had failed miserably at their task. God was wanting righteousness from them. Matter of fact, all the way back in the Old Testament, he'd made a covenant with them. And they had agreed to it. Hey, he said, if you'll do what I say, I'll bless you. I'll minister to you. I'll take care of you. I said, oh man, that sounds great. Now, I'm paraphrasing here. But yet they hadn't held up their part of the bargain. Yeah. God had blessed them and taken care of them and seen them through some hard times and some stressful times and had to pass judgment on them sometimes because of their unrighteousness, but he still loved them. He still took care of them. He still always had a remnant that he was trying to get to understand who he was. He'd bring them from being slaves to a promised land. Yeah. And yet, it still wasn't doing what they needed to do. Now we can blame a lot of this on the religious leaders. They had a lot to do with it. But so did the people, because they blindly followed them. Look at verse 6. Therefore, still having one son, his beloved, he also sent him to them last, saying, they will respect my son. But those Vinedressers said among themselves, this is heir. Come, let us kill him, and the inheritance will be ours. So they took him and killed him and cast him out of the vineyard. Now this is a parable, but it's pointing out what is happening, what's going to happen in Israel. Yeah. He's telling them what is happening in front of their eyes, what they're plotting to do. God sent his son to Israel. And what were the Israelites supposed to be doing? They were supposed to be producing righteousness. And even in the 3 short years that Jesus lived, he was showing them how to do that. He was giving them a fine example of how you live righteously. His teachings, Sermon on the Mount. His parables, his acts of kindness, healing the sick, forgiving, feeding the poor. He was showing you how to do this. He was showing them how to succeed at being righteous. But the religious leaders paid no attention. All they could focus on was that they were losing control. Just like in the parable, they thought to themselves, hey, we kill the son, we get the land. Well, they're thinking the same thing. Hey, we kill the son, we're still in control. They liked it. I mean, the religious leaders had it made. They liked all the respect. They liked people looking up to them. Rome was leaving them alone because they weren't a threat to Rome. So they had it made in shape, man. They made up all these laws, and trust me, they weren't abiding by them themselves. But boy, they sure was wanting everybody else to. Yeah. They were so afraid to lose control that they began to plan to kill Jesus, so they could go on about their business as usual. They're trying to get rid of the messenger. They're not looking out for the ones supposed to be serving. They are not looking out for the ones they're supposed to be caring about. They were there to help those individuals grow stronger and produce righteousness. That was their job. That was what God had called them to do, and yet they did not want to do that. They didn't care about that. Now look at verse 9. Therefore, will the owner of the vineyard do? Will he come and destroy the vine dressers and give the vineyard to others? Have you not even read the scriptures? The stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. This is what the Lord's doing. It is marvelous in your eyes. They sought to lay hands on him, but feared the multitude, for they knew he had spoken the parable against them. See, they're hearing it. They know he's speaking about them. They understand this parable. This is not one of those parables that they don't understand. They know he's talking about them. Yeah. And instead of repenting, instead of saying, you know what, maybe, man, I think he's talking about me. Instead of a self-examination of themselves, what do? They get mad and say, we're going to get rid of him. We're going to kill him. So they left him and went away. So they could plot more. Jesus is warning them what's going to happen. Do you remember when I was telling you about in the temple when Jesus comes in there and he flips over tables? Y'all remember where that's happening at? That's happening in the Gentile court. See, the Jews didn't care about the Gentiles. That's us people. Yeah. He didn't care. They didn't care that they were God's chosen people, so they could live and act how they wanted to live, and then, do a few little sacrifices, and they'd be okay. They didn't care about the Gentiles. Oh, they could have a little court out there, but man, can you imagine trying to have church and you got all these distractions? You got these money changers. You got these people who are checking to see if your animal's righteous enough or pure enough or a whole animal. They're all of this noise. They didn't care. And God said, that's enough. That's enough. You had your opportunity to be my witness. Now he's talking to Israel. He said, you've had an opportunity, but I'm taking from you. Doesn't mean you don't love them. Don't mean they're not still God's chosen people, because they are. They always will be. But he's saying, I'm taking from you what you were not willing to do, and I'm passing it on to other people. In other words, I'm spreading it out for everybody so that they too can come to God. So them too can know about the grace of God and the mercy of God and the sacrifice of God and the love of God. Them too can feel his presence, and them too can go out into the world and spread. And isn't that exactly what happens after the resurrection of Jesus Christ? He gathers his disciples, he gathers those people together, and they go out into the world and they begin to spread the good news. Yeah. Yes, they were still trying to reach the Jews. Yes, they were still going into temples and synagogues, but they were also going out in the fields. Yeah. The shepherds, to the nobodies, sharing with them the love of God. This marked the end of the redemption plan for the Israelites. The focus now is going to be on the Gentiles and how they would spread the gospel, how they'd spread the good news. God said, here, church, this is your responsibility now. here, church, you're supposed to be reaching others for me. God is saying, here, church, this is your opportunity to do what the Jewish leaders would not do, to be more concerned about the welfare of others than you are for yourself. Do you pray for the preaching of the gospel? Do you pray about that? Is that any concern for you? That God takes the preaching of the gospel and ministers to somebody. That God takes the preaching of the gospel and touches somebody's heart. Are you concerned about others hearing the word of God? Are you praying for it? Are you longing for it? Is it a burden on your heart that you want other people to hear the good news that you've heard, to see all the things that you've seen? And the last question I want to ask you is, do people hear the voice of God through you? I'm not telling you to be a Bible scholar. You just tell about what God's done for you. You may not understand all of it. I don't. I'm like Vance Havner, who used to say, I don't understand how a brown cow can eat green grass and give white milk. But it doesn't stop me from eating ice cream. The other day I was driving in my car. Chris used to sing this song when we played together. It was Seminole Wind. And I never could understand the words of that song. I couldn't even understand it when Chris sang it. But you get to that chorus line, man, I'm driving my car. I'm glad there wasn't nobody beside me because I was belting it out, man. I was singing to the top of my lungs. And then when you get to that part I didn't understand, I'd mumble. Man, you're not going to understand everything. Yeah. But it shouldn't stop you from sharing what God has done for you. Nobody can argue with that. They can take this and they can find all kinds of flaws with it. They can argue it up and down. But let me tell you what they can't do is they can't argue what God has done for you. Yeah. What you've seen with your own eyes. What you've felt in your own heart. What you've heard with your own ears. That's what God's wanting you to do. That's what he was wanting Israel to do. Let's reach out to the nations around them. Tell them about how good God is. What would you do with the message? Let's all stand. We have a song of invitation, page 62.